We're back for episode 5 of the Real Work podcast with myself, Ed Lofts. Today's guest is a 20-year-long friend of mine, absolute legend. The kindness and the character of the person is unbelievable. We're here to talk about physical, mental, emotional and financial development and how we grow as people through a practice. So Tom Prosser, Australia's best chef, is a practitioner, and I've seen him develop over the years, the last 20 years, as a person, as a father, as a partner. He's an absolute kind, caring person. So I'd like to thank Tom for coming in today and giving us his very, very valuable time. So thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
It's great for you to be here. Obviously, I haven't seen you for a while as well because you've been away, which is, he lives in Australia now. How long ago did you move there?
14 years.
14 years ago, yeah. So, and you've settled in and it's great. If we jump right back to the beginning, maybe, and we start off, can you tell us how you got into your industry? Like if we start there and then we'll just progress as we go. Yeah, so give us a bit of background on how you got started out.
Perfect, yeah. So the hospitality was kind of in the family. So Dad was a waiter before he was an antiques dealer at 20.
Yeah.
And his mum used to bake cakes for the local cafes and stuff like that, both before they got into antiques. So it was kind of always in the blood, but then my older brother, older sister, Amy and Ollie, both had worked at the local pub. So they'd started washing up when they were about 13, 14. And then when they progressed on to other things, like hanging out with friends, I progressed into the dish pig section. So I got to wash everything by hand. It was really old school kitchen and big sinks. Chefs would sometimes leave knife in the sinks, not very good practices, and you'd get a bit cut. But it was fun. You could be loose, you were treated like an adult almost. And there was hot things flying around, food flying around, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I took it up as my college course. So I did a BTEC National Diploma and a level 2 and level 3 in the kitchen, where we learned all aspects of running hospitality venues, from hotels, cafes to food vans and kitchens. So it was really great. And there I had a really good mentor in Ken Ellis, and he was the head of the Irish culinary national team and won gold medals for those back in the day. So he sort of pushed us when he saw that we had some nuance about us and were able to do things that, or were prepared to do things that other people might not have been in our same position. So he really pushed us into that competition scene to go, look, try and do this. It's a junior competition. We're going to practice as though you're training for the Worlds. Like we did 6 practice runs, we did this. Yeah. And from the very first competition we did it as though we were training to do the penultimate one, which is how you should work, right? Yeah. So while I was there, that's when we met. Yeah. So you've basically seen it from the start of my career all the way through. So after the competition scenes, I went and worked at a 1 Michelin star restaurant called Gravetime Manor, and that had Mark Raffan as the head chef, another friend of mine, Simon Guthridge, who I went through college with, who worked there at the same time, and now he's in Hong Kong and he's got his own Michelin star over there, which is great. And I had 2 really good sections. So I was on the veg section. 1 week into the veg section, there was a little kerfuffle and fisticuffs. The veg chef got his shoulder dislocated with 1 punch from the sous chef. And he had to drive him to hospital. We had 70 covers booked. So it was just me on the section. So in that situation, you either sink or swim. Yeah. And I managed to swim, and I was swimming all the way through that veg section. He had sort of 2 months off work, I think. Light duties. So then I was running the section. So I was like, okay, this is good. It's quite easy. So after some time there, I moved to the dessert section, and I had no pastry training. So I was on the pastry section of a 1 Michelin star restaurant. The pastry chef and I worked together for about 3 months, and then he moved on. And then I was there running the pastry section of a 1 Michelin star restaurant, reading as many books as I could, and like the autobiography from Marco Pierre White and Gordon Ramsay and all of that just came out at this time. So I was reading that, getting inspiration, reading their cookbooks and going, what dishes can I put on there? So it was a really most of the chefs just went, oh, we'll just leave pastry, doesn't matter, you know. So I was like, oh great, I can get my creativity out. So I was sort of preparing dishes for the daily menu changes, and was able to really push myself, learn things that I didn't know how to do through my own research and through my own kind of thirst for knowledge and thirst for improvement.
My memory from back then, I remember you just doing the most ridiculous hours.
Yeah.
Like I think I drove up to see you there once.
Yeah, yeah.
And the living accommodation was not great.
Horrible.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you were like struggling to sleep and things. But yeah, can you talk a little bit maybe about what the actual environment was like in terms of the hours and the effort that was put in? Because that's what I remember. I remember you working yourself so hard in order to get where you wanted to get. And I don't think many people ever work that hard at anything. Yeah. So that for me, it's the time and effort and energy and dedication you put in has got you from back then. Yeah. And it's taken a very long time, but you suddenly reach the pinnacle once you've done it. But yeah, how was that hours wise and things? What did a normal day look like back then?
So you'd get in about 9ish, 8 or 9, and then you'd prepare for lunch. So you'd have this big push trying to get your mise en place done for lunch. The mise en place is everything in its place. Yeah. So you'd do a big push to get that done for lunch. Big adrenaline drop for lunch because you're like, oh, I've got to make sure everything's perfect. So I used to pile the pressure on myself going, someone could have saved up for 2 years to come and do this special dinner with their partner, or they could be the king of bloody Thailand. Yeah. We've cooked for as well. So I was like, it could be anyone that's coming through. I want everyone to have that world-class experience, or what I felt was a world-class experience. And so for me, it was always taste. Is it the best that it can be? And it's cooked right. If not, it's in the bin and we'll do it again. That was that standard that I held myself to and I held other people to at the young age of 18. Yeah. So then after lunch, you'd clean down the whole kitchen. You'd go away and prepare for Sometimes on the split, I'd take things up to that little stable area. Yeah. And so they converted the horse stables into staff accommodation.
Yeah, so you can imagine what it was like. Yeah.
So it was not great, was it? No. So I'd pop the feds. So the broad beans, we'd have to shell those. So I'd shell 5 kilo at the time. Yeah. Either reading the book while I'm shelling them under my foot and reading the book while I'm shelling the broad beans. Yeah. Just for more knowledge, more thirst of knowledge. And then take that back down to the kitchen. I'd had some time away and then I'd prepare for dinner. So you'd be there at 4 o'clock and you've got 2 hours to prepare for start of dinner service. And you're working a few days ahead, but you've still got to make sure everything's on point for that service. So you'd have another adrenaline dump that day. And then you'd clean down the kitchen, write your prep lists and go home, try and unwind in a way. Like I just used to watch like movies or whatever. My Name is Earl.
My Name is Earl.
I used to watch that till like 1 o'clock in the morning because you felt like you hadn't done anything. You hadn't had a moment to yourself. There was no choice. And then you would fall asleep to that, wake up exhausted, have a shower, go down, do it all again. Yeah. So that was sort of repeat for a long time. Then towards the end, I started doing 10 days on, 4 days off. So I'd do 140 hours or whatever it was, and then I'd get 4 days off. So I'd drive down to Hastings after that Friday and then go out, meet you guys out and about on town, overtake you with the drinking because I hadn't really been eating or anything and I was exhausted, and then
go back
recover
and
Saturday, do Sunday, and then the anxiety would start building up on the Monday, Tuesday because you're like, how much prep have I got to do? Yeah. What am I going to go back into as a section? How's the handover going to be? Yeah. Am I going to have enough prep for lunch? So you'd start like stressing then, going, how am I going to do this? Yeah. And that obviously has a negative effect on, your the system and
health,
how you can be. So it wasn't a hugely supportive kitchen of like, oh, we're going to show you how to do this, we're going to show you how to do that. It's like you go on there and that's what you're going to do, right? So an example where I didn't do so well at Grave Tie was when I moved from the pastry section to the larder section. Bearing in mind there was 2 people on the larder section, 1 person on the pastry. They swapped it, so then it was just me on larder and then 2 on pastry, and it didn't. There was no handover. There was no. I was like, what do I need to do? How do I do this? How do I set up the canapes? I need to get them by this time. Talking to the head chef, he's like, "I'll come and show you. Come and show you." He never came and showed me. He's like, "Where's this?"
Yeah.
Like, I've been asking you for like 4 hours. Like, I need some help and input. I haven't done this section, you know. So there was a few moments like that where it wasn't the most positive role models, and you go, "Oh, okay, well, I've kind of got to do my own fight," you know. So from there, I did the Young Chef of the Year while I was working at Grave Tie. So that was the National Young Chef of the Year. I was a finalist in that. I think there was 500 entrants, and got down to the finals, cooked up in Birmingham, got the award night, found the plate at home. Yeah. Not sure where I came because I didn't have the confidence then to go up to the judges and go, "Can I have some feedback on my dishes?" You know, I was very immersed in the trade and in the industry, but there wasn't an aspect of my training that was to do with networking. Yeah. Which, for how social I was, and we were when we were out and about, when it was something like that where I would have heard something that probably would have hurt me, but it would have helped me more, like, because I've put so much into it. I've done my 6 training sessions.
So with that, Edo Portal calls it a limbic friction. Yeah. So you're going to go up and you're going to ask for a piece of information which is going to cause a heating within your nervous system. Yeah. And then you're going to get a response from the friction. Like, how do we make a sword? We fold iron thousands of times to sharpen the sword, but we have to heat it in order for it to be folded and become something that it needs to be. One thing that, just listening to you there and obviously remembering back, you've been thrown in the deep end many, many, many times. And that's another form of this limbic friction where if you're thrown in the deep end, you can either drown and then people can slate the industry. They're horrible. They've done this. Or you can take it as an opportunity. I've been thrown in the deep end and I've been given an opportunity to swim, for them to see me swimming. And when you've been thrown in and you start swimming, then the people above you notice. Yeah. And it is like lighting a candle. Somebody's going to notice, a moth is going to notice the light coming off of it, and they're going to gravitate towards it. And you spoke about Ken, the mentor from Eastbourne College, wasn't it, as well? This relationship between mentor, like, you need somebody to give you that friction. You have to have something to rub against. If you don't have anybody that you actually respect, you can receive criticism of people that you don't respect. Like, the opinions of sheep don't upset the lion. Yes. Yeah. So you need a lion to tell you that's going to upset you in order to light that candle, cause a friction for you to direct. But can you talk a bit about that? About, like, are there people out there that you class as your teachers, or have you made everybody your teacher and you've observed from other people's mistakes? Because I've seen you do both as well. But who are the people that have really helped you develop in terms of your teaching?
So professionally, like, a lot of it was Ken in those early years, and yourself as well. Like, we trained together. I trained with you, I should say, you know, and the martial arts really helped. But then there was that friendship from the start, like, you know, rather than, I suppose, that student teacher mentality. Like, it was that personal, and we just hit it off like family straight away. Straight away, 100%. You know? So the emotional and internal intelligence, I suppose, like, there was a lot of learnings that I got from you through the conversations that we'd have, and the very deep and meaningful conversations.
They're never shallow. They're never shallow.
You know, and it was always very fascinating, and we still have them now.
Yeah.
And it's been 5 years since I've been in England,
Yeah.
but we still talk on the phone, and life gets in the way. But as soon as we see each other,
It's just the same,
nothing's
yeah.
happened, right? So they're the biggest growths. Obviously, Dad, he's been just a big support. He's always
Yeah.
a big helper and a big support of everything, and Mum as well. Not just Dad, but both my parents.
both, yeah.
You know, Amy and Ollie, they both go through, and that's one of those things where it's really hard. Where I come back now and I'm like, oh, if I kind of had that support network around me, like I've got a really good support network there now. But if I'd had that support network with yourself, Tony, like everyone, then I kind of, it's all very well imagining where life could be, but you kind of go, people with that network, your network's your network.
Yeah.
So people with that network, it's easier to go a lot further.
Yeah, to move
if that
it.
makes sense.
Like
quicker.
In Buddhism, there's one of the times they say like find shelter within the Buddha. They say, but that's what it is. It's like you're finding a place of comfort within your network of people. So it's having somewhere to go that you can retreat, whether it be internally or in an environment with people where you can be nurtured and develop and feel safe and share things in a safe way. And I think that's really important. Like you definitely, the family that you have, the people that are around us, the martial arts for us at the time, there's something to your credit. We've been in those martial arts classes, we've punched each other, we've kicked each other, we've choked each other. But there's an ability for you to walk in the room like you've done this evening as well. You haven't trained for a long time. We put you through your paces this evening with a circuit and everything, but you switch on the student role.
Yeah.
And you just take that and you run with it. And so you deliver ethically and morally what it means to be a student. And not many people can do that, especially when they've achieved something.
Yes.
And the reason that you've achieved something is because you have that ability. You suck up knowledge, you're persistent, determined, but precise and clear. You have the clarity you have with what you do in the delivery of your culinary skills, I should say.
Yeah.
That it's not very common at all, is it? And it's that practice that I think has developed from somewhere. And Ido talks about it where he says if you practice enough, we practice till we reach a critical mass.
Yeah.
And then we can't go backwards. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. And then it becomes a standard that you need to maintain yourself at. And it doesn't mean that you can't actually go back, because people can bury their head in the sand and pretend it's not there, which we've talked about a little bit as well. But it's this critical mass that's achieved through constant practice. And then that's where the hours come in. Like people talk about, don't they, 10,000 hours practice. And it's nothing to do with the amount of hours spent. It's about the diligence put into the practice that comes with it. And you accumulate many, many hours, but out of those 10,000 hours, how many were proper hours practice? Yeah. And that's something that you've done. The question that it would lead me on to then is, so when you went to Australia, you've obviously met Jess, you have the children now as well, and so you're now a role model for them. Yeah. And the industry that you came through, you said that in the industry there wasn't the right role model, so you got thrown in at the deep end so many times and stepped up and became who you are now. But is that because that's what the industry needs? Is there problems within the industry? How's it looking at the moment? And why do you think you've become the person that you have today because of it?
Yeah. So yes, there is. The industry's getting a lot better. So from the times at grave tying at the waterside, which was even more intense than grave tying, it's gotten a lot better. Like people aren't doing 100-hour weeks. They're getting paid a living wage, which is great, and that needed to happen for the industry. The hours are a lot better, like that work-life balance. Like the industry is listening. People are doing 4-day weeks now, but there's still the connotation of like it's a hard industry. Like you're going to miss out on your social gatherings. Like you're going to have to sacrifice things. So to make the industry better, we need more people in, right? So you can have rotating rosters. Like unfortunately it is it's a social industry in the fact that people go there to socialize, but as a worker you're working when you've got businesses when people are socializing. So you need to be able to either offer incentives to staff and go, you're going to have 1 weekend off, 2 weekends off, or 1 weekend day off a month. And that will go a lot further to help people go, oh, okay, yeah, I don't mind, I'm going to be missing out this, or I can swap this shift with this person. Whereas if you've got the whole team working every Saturday, every Sunday, it
tends to go downhill quickly.
So it's hard because that's where the business needs the workers too. So it is a balancing act. I mean, look, it's an education piece for customers and consumers. They need to know that it's not, the prices are up for a reason. If it's an ethical business and they're paying their staff properly and they're getting great ingredients from wherever they can, the best source they can, then you're paying for the quality. And one of the things that Michel Roux said when the GFC hit, so I was there in 2008, they did a staff meeting and he goes, look, we're not going to close, all of your jobs are safe, and we're probably not going to get affected too much by it because we offer value for money. So a lot of people now don't offer that value for money. Either the skill's not there in the food that's put on the plate, so then you go there and go, ooh, I feel a bit shortchanged there, I could have done a better job myself. The ingredients aren't as good, or the portions are tiny. So you go there, you pay a lot of money, and then you leave and you're hungry and you go, oh, well, I've gone to a restaurant and I've paid $400 or £400 and I'm leaving and I need to go and either have something to eat on the way home or I'll make myself something at home. And I've had that experience before as well. And I can be very forgiving in the industry, and when I go out, I'm the easiest person to cook for. But if something's advertised in a certain way, then I can be very critical too, because I know what I'm looking for. So the other issue is it's the instant gratification, right? So you've got, with social media, there's social media stars that are coming out as the food heroes, and they don't necessarily have the right knowledge. You'd find it in the martial arts world as well, I'm sure.
100%.
But because they present well, they're now deemed as an expert. And they haven't done the hours, they haven't got the fundamentals, the training, the knowledge to be able to go, this is why it happens. So there's a lack of understanding and a race to... It's not a race to get the responsibility, it's a race to get the glory. So the way I always learn to be able to teach. So I'd develop a really deep understanding of why things happened, why the food reacts in this way when you season it before you cook it, and how does that draw more flavour in. So I really did a deep dive into how to get the most flavour out of the ingredients and make the ingredients shine. And then I could apply that in other things. So with the martial arts, when I was watching you, I was like, okay, how can I learn this? And what does my body need to do that I can explain it to someone? And I wouldn't ever explain it to people, because your classes and most of the classes that I've done in the martial arts have been that well structured and that well designed that there hasn't really been a need. But I would have that understanding as though I was going to teach.
If you needed to,
know?
100%.
So that was why I was like, okay, well, let's learn as though I want to teach, and that will help me progress further.
One of the things you said, so there's a similarity, people might not notice it, between preparing food and sending it out for somebody else to eat and martial arts, because the reality check comes in with the taste test. So if the food doesn't taste right, or it's not the right temperature, it's getting sent back. And it's the same thing with a martial arts tournament.
Yeah.
If you're not first place, you've been sent back.
Yeah.
And you're getting sent back into the kitchen to sharpen your knives, re-prepare, make sure your ingredients are good, and then go back for another taste test another day.
Yeah.
But again, it's another position you can put yourself in to receive this friction that we need in order to change ourselves and develop. But can you, like you said about grave time manner, the first couple of days you're there, someone's got punched in the shoulder, dislocated shoulder, and they're off for a while. And then you went to waterside in after that. In the kitchen environment, like people have seen it on Gordon Ramsay's shows and things where the pots and pans are getting thrown across. People, one of my mentors would have said that people were getting some fucks thrown into them. Yeah. Like that's the expression that he would have used. So it's like, can you give us a couple of examples of things you've seen in the kitchen where it's almost like physical confrontations, emotional confrontations, where people just break like completely and throw the towel in kind of thing?
So that was quite common there. So on my first day of the stage, so the work experience that I did at the waterside before I went to work there properly, the fish chef, the demi chef de partie on the fish section, the preparation section of the fish, he just ghosted. So in the split, his knives were still there, apron's still there, he never came back to get them.
Yeah, correct.
So the three people on the veg section did the same that same day. So I get there in the morning and the three on the veg section's not there. So the sous chef's like, are you okay, like jumping in? I said, yeah, man, just I've been doing the veg section for this long. Just let me know what to do and I'll do it. You know, I'm happy. Yeah. And then after the split, like we got through, he still remembers it. We got through and came to the, like I noticed the fish guy didn't come through and I was like, oh, that's pretty brutal. So I got to see all the sections there and then fell in love with it. And I kind of, when I was at Grave Tie, I was just finishing up. I was at that point where I was like, I've seen enough here. I've been here 2 years. I've done every section. I feel like I know, I've progressed as much as I can. And Mark came up to me and goes, well, you've handed your notice in. What are you going to do? I go, I don't know. I go, oh, I might go work at the waterside. Like I've just done my stuff. And he's like, well, have you emailed him? Like, how can you just go without a job and do this? So he pushed me into apply there. I sent the email that day at the computer at Grave Tie and heard back and he said, start in August. So I managed to get in there.
Like it's not easy to get in there, is it? So
no. So when I was there was 25 chefs. I think half of them were like full-time chefs as in paid salary on the books. Yeah. And at least 10 to 12 of them were stagiaires, like working there for free, or for a very reduced rate of pay. So you'd go. That was a 6-month waiting list to do that, but that was the norm back in the day of like, I want to go work there, so I'm going to sacrifice my time and money to go and stay in a B&B close to them, and I'm going to go work there. And you see a lot of a kitchen when you do that. You moved around the sections. No one's stressed at you because you're a guest in the kitchen and you're helping out, especially if you're able to apply yourself and push. Like that's the easiest way to get social credit in a kitchen is to apply yourself, do your job properly, and be a good person. And that got there. So I was I had three days on the veg section, on the herb section when I started full time, which was picking and chopping herbs all day for 18 hours a day. I got a blood blister on this finger, it swelled up.
You're literally doing 18-hour days, aren't you? Yeah. It's not messing around, it's just you're doing this job and it's going to come. Like we have parents saying to us, oh, their child training 3 1-hour sessions a week, or once they get a bit older they move up to kind of like 5 hours a week, 6 hours maximum. But you've got some gymnasts training 40 hours a week that are like top level. So, but this is what people don't understand, the amount of friction that it takes to reach a critical mass where you're going to go somewhere with it. And how many people along the way have you seen drop off?
Well, there's probably a handful of chefs that I went to college with that are still cooking.
Yeah.
There's probably more from the restaurants that are still cooking, and a lot of them have gone on and done great things.
Yeah.
But it's not like this was the family that trained up Gordon Ramsay. They trained up Marco Pierre White. Like that was the place to go. Marcus Waring. Everyone went through
there. Yeah.
the Roux brothers.
Yeah.
And that was just what it was. Like you went there, but it was very rigid. So you would get, if you're on this section, this is the way we do it, and that's it. You know, like we've had carrots thrown at me. I've seen pots go flying around the kitchen. I have seen fisticuffs. I've had where I've called people out for either being an arsehole, and I've been an arsehole myself as well. Like I did become a product of my environment through there.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any tools, especially back in those days, on how to deal with stress and how to deal with that whole like intense pressure. So you've got intense pressure at least 2 times a day or 4 times a day really, because you're planning your day and there's that switch in your head going, how am I going to get all this done? Then you're in there getting it all done, then it's service, and then you've got say 100 people that are micro judging your food. So you've got micro deadlines all the way through like a 4-hour period. And then you've got to do it all again for dinner. Yeah. And then you've got to clean down the kitchen, and you're out of there by 1 o'clock in the morning. And you started there at 7 o'clock in the morning. So then you've got to do it all again. And you've got to there's no real way to deal with that healthy. Like one of the guys used to drink. I'd have a Diet Coke with the slice of lemon in it and a bag of Haribo every night. Yeah. And I smoked then too. So I'd smoke like a pack of cigarettes throughout an 18-hour shift. Yeah. And that's 20 cigarettes. And I'd just be a chain smoker to the break room, go back there, this.
This is where Tim Fletcher's information will come into play, because these are a list of unhealthy coping mechanisms for stress. And we've noticed them in the environment growing up. People say, "Oh, try a cigarette, have a drink," and these are all fine. That it's all fun to use in the right circumstances at the right time. When you become dependent on those, feel like you even just said Diet Coke and a Haribo every single night, and it's like we have to go to these go-to things to help us regulate our emotions and our nervous system. You've talked a little bit about the anxiety and the stress that comes out of it as well, but the entire industry sort of setup there is high pressure, high demand, isn't it? And this is the thing, the friction can end up being too much and burning people, and the perfectionism comes in that we want to achieve. And again, there's different types of perfectionism. So there's unhealthy perfectionism, where we're going to set our standards so high they're unobtainable. Yeah. And then there's the perfectionism where we've just got something right and we know it's right, and you put the food on the table and it tastes perfect for one, or in a martial arts scenario, you throw the kick that takes the other person out. One move, everything comes into a flow state, as people call it, and it just works. And then that's healthy perfectionism. Those things can be achieved. But how do we differentiate between the two? When do we know that we're hurting ourselves through the practice detrimentally, and when do we know that we're hurting ourselves through the practice to reach a critical mass? And is this something that you've tackled or struggled with?
I had days where I would just have the biggest smile on my face working in that environment, just going, oh, everything's just flowing, everything's working really well, and this is amazing. And then you'd have days that were just like super, super hard, because you're putting your all into it, right? You're there 18 hours and you're like, okay, well, this is hard, and it seems to be harder than it needs to be to get the job done. One of the issues I had was when I got moved onto the butchery section, I couldn't get the mousse right, so it'd come back.
I
back.
remember I was talking
a
long to
Why can't I understand it? And it was so frustrating for me because I had a passion for the proteins, the meats, and that kind of stuff, and I just couldn't understand how to get this mousse really smooth. So I'd take it up to the chef, try it. He goes, "No, it's no good. It's too grainy." I'm like, "What do I need to do to make it better?" And he's like, "Work it more, add more cream, add more salt." So I'd do that. And the worst thing would be is if you added too much cream without mixing it or emulsifying it, it would split. So then you'd have to start the whole process again. And I was like, I can't do this. So it'd take me a long time to do this mousse. Everything else I could get quite well boxed off really quick. I got down to prepping a duck in 30 seconds, and I could go through 110 ducks in a week, and that would be great. Like I'd be on the section on my own on the butchery. But it was just this mousse that was my Achilles heel there, and it was a great source of stress, especially in summer when I had to do a chicken mousse and a rabbit mousse on a Tuesday afternoon before a Tuesday dinner service, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, man. Like, it's just nuts. So that was that pressure of perfection, of trying to get it to that point of this needs to be perfect. Again, it could be the King of Thailand, or it could be this person that saved up for probably 5 years to go there. And it's like, I don't care who's eating, it needs to be the best that it can be and the best that I can do. So that was a huge source of stress and anxiety that I didn't know how to deal with, and I didn't know how to get the tools to be able to progress, like, you know, and actually learn and understand what was happening whilst making this move. So
I think that this where by looking back, Jiddu Krishnamurti says you can split the world into two sets of people, those that know and those that don't know.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, what is it that they know? And it's the fact that we can reach a critical mass. Like you said a minute ago, you're trying something, and if it doesn't go correctly, you can't wing it, you can't patch it up, you can't add something else, you have to start again.
Yeah.
And then you have to walk the same path you've already trodden, and you'll get to the same point and it's gone wrong again.
Yeah.
And you have to go back and you have to start the same path, and there's something there that you've gone past. So you've done the process, but there's something you've gone past that you haven't noticed on that path. And it's when you've repeated the path enough times, you tend to get bored of it. You tend to take it for granted. So you're not interested in it. You don't pay attention because you've done it 500 times. And then one day, on the 501st time you walk down the path, you go, oh my God, I'd never noticed that before. And it's when you capture that, it corrects the path, and then you find out the path goes a lot longer. It's a lot longer. Yeah. And that's where you start accelerating the speed at which you travel down the path. But the differentiation of what we know and what we don't know, to discriminate against what is right and what is wrong. And I think that's really important, because it's like you've even said there that the environment in the kitchen, it's damaging sometimes, the long hours, but you knew that if you stuck at it, something would come out. And the other thing you said about was the rigidity of you come in their environment and they say, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And you're not in a nice, safe environment. I've seen burns on your arm before from opening ovens and different things, like if you've cut your fingers and things. The environment is not safe in the first place. Then you throw into the mix abusive terminology. How people crack the whip is really difficult, and it's damaging sometimes. I had an instance where Ido said to me once, I've talked to him about this, he said, Ed, my friend, he gave you a lesson in ethics. Yeah. And what Ido was talking about was my ethics had fallen out. They were landed on the floor right in front of me and I didn't even see them. Yeah. Kind of thing. And then it gave me an opportunity to either say to him, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, you're in the wrong, you manipulated me, you're trying to make this happen. Or I go, okay, my ethics are on the floor, I feel vulnerable, I've been seen. And one of my things my entire life is I wanted to be seen, but only by the people that I respected. I don't give two flying pigs if somebody who doesn't know what I'm trying to achieve says well done to me, because they're saying well done because I've impressed them or I've done something here. And they're impressed by the cars, the money, the achievements.
They've seen the result, but not the journey.
Not the journey. And I always wanted to be seen by somebody who was walking the path and said, I've crossed your footsteps on this path. And I think that's what happened with us possibly as well. We've dated back a friendship which is both student-teacher. I've learned a lot off you over the years because my cooking is terrible. I burn toast.
Not anymore though.
Yeah, not anymore. It's pretty good now, yeah, to be fair. I don't cook often anymore. But yeah, this is the key to it. The fact that we can sit and laugh, we can joke about things, but we also understand there's something else developing, isn't there? And I still don't know what it is. It's very difficult to pinpoint, but I've seen it develop in you, and I've seen it develop in other people. Like your brother is extremely skilled at fixing very, very old race cars and building things from scratch. He's unbelievable at that. And it's a practice. It's this practice that we've been through. And I gravitate towards people that do that. With my example there of Ido saying something that I could have taken badly, but it was a very valuable lesson to me, and I wasn't offended by what he was saying. I was grateful for it, and even now I still sit there and think about that. And Ido said to me recently, he said he remembers we have these meetings where everybody sort of gets to Q&As basically with people, and Ido said to me, I remember every single question you've ever asked me. And I was like, wow, that's massive for me to have somebody that I respect so much comment about my path and what's going on with me. But you mentioned Ken as a mentor earlier, and then you've had these other mentors along the way that are huge within your field kind of thing, like they produce people like Gordon Ramsay and other things like that. Can you give us an instance of when you were seen or somebody made you feel so vulnerable that it's almost like you don't know what to do, you want to hide, but you knew that that's what you went there for in the first place?
So one of the days at the waterside, there was a bit of friction in the kitchen, and I was on the butchery section. We had a front meat guy who would cook all the meat and do the sauces, and the meat veg guys as well, I believe, and there was a bit of friction between the four of us, or the three heads, and Fabrice took us to one side and was like, what the fuck's going on with all of you? Like, you do your job, and you do your job, and just shut the fuck up on service. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, it wasn't like a full-grown argument on service, but there was like little dips and stuff here and there. So it was a really good, like, pull your neck in kind of moment, and try and calm down and try and deal with things in a better way. Like it worked, like, in the fact that I thought about it and I was like, oh yeah, I need to sort that out. But the anger, like, I was very angry throughout the whole time of, like, grave tie on the waterside when I was at work, whether it was a case of, like, missing out on certain events or whatever it was, or the stress, and that was how I dealt with the stress. And there was, like, different things. One guy would come up and bite me on the shoulder, which would annoy the piss out of me, so I'd turn around and use a bit of the martial arts and kick him in the date as he was running away, and he'd let out a yelp. But, like, stuff like that where you just go, this isn't me, this isn't what I grew up to be. Like, it's not the environment that I've had from a young age, but I developed it throughout this environment, and I'm like, that's not the healthiest thing. I don't want to be getting older and being this old, bitter, twisted person who can't have relationships with people. Like the sous chef at Grave Tie, every morning, you might not be able to use this word, but he used to call it, I was the only one. He'd walk past the pass. I'd go, "Morning, Dean, how are you?" He'd go, "What's up, cunt?" And I was like, right, and he'd just stare at me as he walked past. I don't know what sort of play he was trying to do, but every morning for about a year, that's how I was greeted. And I was like, oh, this isn't great. Like,
yeah.
like,
and again, it shows more about him than it does about you, doesn't it? 100%. And as a younger person, you don't kind of realise that. It's almost like that type of stuff can wear away at you.
Yeah.
But as we get a bit older, as we understand these things, it's like that guy was there every day unhappy, and he was having to take out his frustrations and his inner turmoil and his sadness and sorrow on everybody around him instead of probably changing jobs. Yeah.
It was focused, like. Yeah. So he came up to me, he's like, "You know why I'm harder on you than this person or this person?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "But you don't have to be a cunt about it." Like, basically giving it back. Like, go harder on me. Yeah. I want to learn, I want to progress, and I know why you're doing it. But do it in a right way, you know. Don't just do that. And so, and that grinds and it makes your day, like if that's how you're starting your day, like, great, okay. But then it was fine after that, like it was okay. And he'd just pull up a few things and you go, okay, well, that's fair. Or that doesn't make sense or whatever, you know. But I'd always try and take the feedback and see what I can do to grow. But because of the way a lot of the feedback was delivered, I wouldn't always go out and search for it. I wouldn't always go and ask for help, and I wouldn't always reach out where I should have done and could have learnt more. Like that was a detriment to myself, and it's a detriment to anyone who doesn't ask for help. You know, like you're not going to progress, you're not going to learn. And I think because I was so self-sufficient and I did get a good understanding of things, and a few times that I did ask for help, I didn't get it. You kind of got like, it took a lot for me to go, I need help here. And then it didn't come through and you're like, fuck, okay, well, I'm not going to get the help even when I ask for it. So I've just got to knuckle down and put that second gear in or third gear in. You know?
You kind of you find the way that you need to.
Like, okay, well, that's that done. You go, okay, let's move.
Move from there. And then, so obviously that period all happened, you gaining a huge amount of experience, and then you jumped across the other side of the planet and you're in Australia. And you've done a lot of different things over there. You've consulted for people, you've done a fantastic job, and then you've started the competitions over there as well. So can you run us through kind of like the competition that you won recently and the pressure that you put on yourself from that, the pressures that were out there, the competitive environment, and how do you think what had happened to you in your environments in England and your training and your process, your thought patterns, how did that benefit you when you had to go through this on the other side of the world?
Yeah, it was interesting because I applied to do this competition probably 8 years ago and didn't get selected to go through to the cook-offs. And then I didn't think about it again because I was like, well, can't do that. So I didn't do competitions for 16 years in between my last competition and the next one. 3 years ago, I entered it for the first time. I was running a private members club. I was a partner in that, and it was sort of Australia's answer to Soho House. Soho House hadn't come to Australia yet, so I started off consulting for them. But I put myself through the 6 training sessions with Mystery Box. I got my sous chef and suppliers to work together to give me ingredients, and then she'd put it out and go, right, you've got an hour to get 4 starters, 4 mains, you don't know in your ingredients, let's rock and roll. So I did that within the constraints of my kitchen, not knowing what to expect at the competition. COVID had just happened. So I hadn't seen it for sort of at least 4 or 5 years, because I'd seen it down in Melbourne 5 years before, but I hadn't seen it, so I didn't know what to expect. And I was working down in Melbourne, so I sort of could go and get glimpses of this competition rather than seeing how it all worked. And So I went into that thinking I was going to do really well. I'd practice my 6 practice sessions. Everything was on time. Everything, taste is my biggest thing. Presentation probably takes too much of a back foot, but I'm like, if things taste really good, then, and don't get me wrong, things still look nice, but it's not tweezers and plated up that way because it didn't need to be. So when I did that competition, I'd made enough of an impact that they said, we'll put you in as wildcard, come back, make sure you come back. No one wins first time, make sure you come back. So I was like, okay. So the next year I'd done enough of an impression to get asked to try out for the Bocuse d'Or, which is like the Culinary Olympics. And I got asked to trial out to represent Australia. And from there, that was the following year. So I prepared for that one as well, even more intense than I had the other ones, and invested sort of a bit too much money into that. And the Chef of the Year was at the same time. So I was like, all right, I'll go into this one. I don't really need to practice for the Chef of the Year because I'm practicing so hard for this one. It will just come together. Didn't quite get the result I was working towards for the Bocuse. And then that mental effect of that went on to the next competition, the Chef of the Year, which was after. So I managed to get through to the semi-finals that time and just sort of went, well, I'm done with competitions after. Maybe we'll do the Bocuse the following 2 years if I can get on the support team and that kind of thing. And just sort of put a hole in it and just went, we'll hang it up. There's no real competitions that I want to do in Australia. There's nothing there.
With that, do you have like any attachment to it where you're kind of like, I really want to win it, or was it just the experience from it left a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth kind of thing?
So I wanted. I was manifesting as much as I could. I was visualizing. I was doing all the things that are the right things to do when you're preparing yourself to get onto that world stage. And I, like I said, I felt like I'd done enough. I know what my food tastes like. And there was a lot of disappointment there and a lot to process. And I didn't get a lot of great constructive feedback into what I can do to improve. And I had changed by then, and I was seeking it out, going, what can I do to get to this point? And it didn't feel like there was anything constructive there to go, this is how you can improve to be able to come and be selected, you know. Although I did get an email from one of the judges saying, or a message on Instagram, I should say, saying, you'd make a great candidate. Make sure you come back. Would you like some feedback in this? And I said, yeah, I'd love some feedback, and never heard anything back. So I'm like, okay, that's just
it's helpful.
I can just put this down to whatever learnings, you know. So then I was like, I'm done with competitions. And then a friend of mine, Amanda Fuller, who runs it's Sam Prince Hospitality Group. She's the group executive chef there. She said you should go in again, and I'm like, I'm done. I've tried. Hasn't gone my way. The second time I was just like, what's the point in them? And it didn't. My head wasn't in it, so I couldn't cook the same way. And then I went, I'll just chuck my hat in the ring one more time. Like, otherwise it'd be in Melbourne the year after if I got the bug again, and it would be hard to go down and get to. So I was like, let's give it a go. It's on my doorstep. And we had 3 tough days of competitions, 280 people entered, 32 finalists, and there was 4 heats the first day, 4 heats the second day, and then it's the finals, semi-finals and finals on the last day. So if you get through that first day, then you've got to cook twice on the second day if you get through both heats, both finals. So it's an hour of competition. It's a mystery box situation, so you don't know what ingredients you've got. And then you've got sort of 10 minutes to get your section set up, write down your menu, and then cook. So you have to do 4 portions of main, 4 portions of starter, using these ingredients, and then it's down to the judges. So there's sort of 7 judges there, very acclaimed chefs in Australia. There's Darren Templeman, who's an English chef who had worked in 3 Michelin star back in the day in London. Simon Sandel, who was Matt Moran's executive chef for his group, or for Aria, which was a 2-hat restaurant back in the day, or it still is now. I think it might have been 3. And there was several other high caliber restaurateurs and chefs. So I was like, well, let's see. So I've made friends with those judges throughout, like afterwards, because I valued and respected the feedback. They're headed by John McFadden, who's won some world titles with cooking competitions over in America and stuff like that. So it was quite an esteemed group of judges, and I enjoyed their company while I was cooking. So I was able to relax a little bit more, I suppose, towards the end. So the first time I was very confident, and I was talking to the customers, not even customers, I was treating it like a live demo. So I'm like, hey guys, and I had a huge crowd around me, and then it didn't go my way. And I was like, okay, that's a big crush. And the guy who won that heat went on to win the whole competition. He was the chef of the year that year. And then the second time my head wasn't quite in it, and then the third time I was like putting so much internal pressure on myself that I was still talking to people and people could see, but I wasn't talking anywhere through the competition.
A couple of questions with this. So under that amount of extreme pressure when you're performing at this very, very high level, obviously, so we talk about the 3 main things we need to watch out for to catch ourselves, which then point us towards where we can develop maybe. So it would be physical tension within the body.
Yeah.
So whilst you're doing all of that, do you notice any tension within the body? Like where would that be in your body whilst you're doing that?
So I've always internalized it, and it's like in the core.
Yeah.
So I always find it in the core, even in the high pressure restaurants and that kind of situation. It was always that core was tense.
Almost like a knot in your stomach kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's like, it was just there. So before the first heat, I was in the green room, and I was did like 10 push-ups just to get that energy going around my arms, try and burn some of that nervous energy. Just before the second heat, did the same, and then in between the first and the second, I just lay down and had to sleep, and I was like, let's just have a rest. Nothing I can do now,
Yeah.
So
so we have the first one, obviously, is the tension within the body, physical tension, and it builds, and if it's got to go somewhere, obviously if you leave it too long, you get the tension, you end up in a fixed position. In polyvagal theory, it sends us into a spinal sympathetic state or a dorsal vagal state where we're going towards panicking, basically, if we get too tense. Then we have negative, cyclical, ruminating thoughts. So it would be back talk, self-chatter within our mind about what we could do better, why it's not going our way, and we can make excuses for ourselves in our head. So whilst you're doing that, can you sort of remember having any of these like negative points come up, or are you so focused and you're so practiced at it that you just concentrate on what you're doing, being present?
With that one, I never really have the negative thoughts, which I find quite positive. I suppose it comes in more after with the negative thoughts. You're like, this and that. But during the competition, I'm that well practiced. I'm that comfortable with what I'm doing that I can get flavour into things, that I can cook things quite well. It doesn't ever fall in. So I've just got a mental prep list that I'm going through. I've already visualised the hour while I was writing the menu going like this. I've got a prep list that I work from, because you're going to miss things if you don't. So I always have a song, or a part of a song that's just playing in my head.
Yeah.
And it can be whatever it is, but it will be a part of a song, and that's when I'm in that flow state.
Yeah.
It will be that song's
You just
playing
repeat,
through, and
yeah.
that's all I
It's one
can
of
kind
the
hear.
same things we've talked about this before. So if I'm running, I do exactly the same thing. I'll on the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 as I'm running, and I'll have like a snippet of a song that I just repeat and repeat and repeat, almost like a meditational practice right through, or a mantra possibly that will help, and that tends to fight off any negative cyclical ruminating thoughts, which is it's interesting. So that's we've got physical tension within the body, we've got ruminating cyclical negative emotions. Then the last one, which happens quite a lot, is expression of negative emotions. So in these type high stress situations, people start to be bickering with other people and having a really bad pop at other people. A good example from our past is people in a bar where I used to work as well, that if you put your foot wrong or you bump something, staff members would just slate you straight away. Get off there!
Yeah.
And it's that's a really good example for me that both of us would recognise of negative expression of emotion. And I personally, this is why I admire you so much for what you've done. You very rarely express any negative emotion, not because you don't have it in you, you don't need to.
Yeah.
Because so you're capable of doing it if you needed to, but you normally channel, again, I don't know these terms, but you channel or direct negative emotion into the friction you need to develop yourself better. So you'd rather take it on board and use it than take it out on somebody else. But in that case, so those three things now as a coping mechanism that people use, or something that's happening to them, a lot of people don't even realize that those things are happening until you point them out or identify them for them. But what about the third one, the expression of negative emotion?
So that, like, everyone always says, I suppose since I've matured, so since I got to about 25, where the temper tantrums and the negative expression of emotions were quite regular, I suppose, because if I felt people weren't doing their job or they were taking the mickey and out of their job and not performing and doing what they were paid for, after pulling them up nicely 3 times, I had a sort of 3-time rule. If it was the same thing, then they'd get the negative expression of emotion. And that I felt was fair enough when you're pushing as hard as you can to do it. And that's, I had never seen anything different or anything wrong. And that was something that was told to me, like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this because I'm saying the same thing over and over and it's happening. But after the age of, say, 25, I had a bit of I realised I was the only one getting stressed out about it. Like, I mean, the staff would have done, but they weren't taking it home and taking it on board. They probably would have thought I was a bit of a dick or worse, and that was it. So all I was doing was affecting myself with that negative expression, and it was like a light switch just went, and I was like, well, there's no benefit for me allowing myself to get that worked up over someone else's job, which I've got no control over. I'll just carry on and I'll offer advice, and that's the way it's been for the last 12 years, you know. So now people see me, and when it's a high pressure situation or something gets changed at the last minute, they're like, how come you're so calm? I'm like, because I've gone through like the worst things that you can go through, and I've managed to come out the other side when I was very ill-equipped and there wasn't anything. So I figured this out. And then I've come out the other side. So then when things would happen, they'd be like, you're so calm. I'm like a duck, you know, like I look really calm and I'm walking around nice and like not in a rush, not hasty, but I'm getting things done effectively and working very quick. And I'm just like a duck on water. So inside, all of the emotions and everything's just twiddling, and I'm figuring things out. I've got my song playing in my head, but there's no need for that, like, rah, I need to release. There's no need for that release, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's healthy to internalize it and use it as that friction as the way for it to go, but it's got to be a lot healthier than that, like, verbal release.
And taking it on somebody else. Then it comes to the point where a lot of the time other people don't do their jobs. We've got this problem nowadays with accountability and responsibility and the burden that somebody takes on when they're actually playing a role in a job.
Yeah.
And the people are not realizing that they are the cause of the effect it has on us, other people, not myself obviously and yourself, but everybody inclusively. We can affect other people with our actions, and it's really important that if you're doing a paid role and you're not meeting the expectations, not even trying to meet the expectations of the role. I think Simon Sinek talks about it, quietly quitting within a job, where you do the bare minimum just so you don't get fired, but you're not really bringing any benefit to the organisation as a whole. And the one thing I've noticed with what you just talked about a little bit, the people that do these type of things and that they let the tension build up and they've got these ruminating cyclical thoughts in their head in a negative fashion, and then they express it at other people negatively, they're the ones that are trying to strive for the unhealthy perfection, and they never reach any accumulative mass kind of thing. They never get to a point of no return. Whereas once you suss it out yourself, like you said, it's something you have to do internally through a reflective practice. You have to think about what's happened, learn from it, and step up as you go. You kind of get to a point in you as a person where the practice has efficiently changed you, it's developed you, and then perfection is something which becomes really healthy. It's like, I'm going to hold myself to these standards. And then for similar, we've had these conversations where if you've developed it in one area and you go, okay, this dish or this kick or this punch or this form in martial arts, if it can be aimed at perfection, it's never going to be perfect, because once it reaches perfection, it can then be refined. And we can always better. And that's, if we got to perfection, it wouldn't be any good, would it? The point is, in order for us to develop, we must have reached perfection. Because once we've reached perfection, development is the next stage. And then we reach that perfection. And then we develop the next stage. And that's what we're talking about. But I think that these people, like Jiddu Krishnamurti says, those that know and those that don't know. And kind of once you start to lean towards what you want to know, that's the first thing. Those that want to know, they're the ones that find the joy in it and the happiness in it, and that all of the stress and all of the turmoil that you've put yourself through over years and years and years, it culminates as something which is now a happy human being that's connected with safe people, that doesn't mind being vulnerable. Like, you don't mind sharing what you're talking about. You don't mind sharing the struggles, the ups and the downs. And I personally, for you, I think it's been an amazing journey to see this happen. And I know you're going to be carrying it on, same as me, for the rest of our lives. But I don't know if any of that made sense internally to kind of, that this is where Edo Portal's information came in so poignantly for me, because it was about the practice and it wasn't about the achievements and the goals. It was about the internal development and the practice. And I think that's why we got on so well, so quick, back from a long time ago. But can you talk a little bit about that? Like where the culmination of the competitions and how you feel now has led you and left you, like, because obviously you won the competition finally.
Yeah.
And like, do you now see it differently? Is there a different view Now you got the very wide based pyramid.
Yeah.
And because of the wide base of all your experience, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, the development there, instead of just stopping with a short pyramid with a small base, you've now got this massive. You're the top of the tree, so to speak.
Yeah.
And how's that feel now? It's all culminated.
It was a relief when it happened, because obviously I'd put so much in and I wasn't sure of what the results were going to be. I learnt so much on the journey when I did pick up the competitions again, that I was like, that was just as valuable for me, because the creativity got back, the being able to do different things with different ingredients, putting myself in the time limits again, and just letting those creative juices run, like reading the books, doing the research, watching the videos, and just developing that deeper understanding again, and just going, yeah, this is great. Like, my cooking had progressed during that time, like, which is fantastic, like it progressed more in that time than it had done in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. So I was very thankful for the journey and for the lessons that I learned, even though I didn't always get the results that I wanted. It meant that when I did, I was like, okay, well, what can I do now to capitalize and to grow even further? Like, what opportunities can I create for not only myself, but what opportunities can I create for myself and future chefs that win the title, and make it much more prestigious and much more worthy of entering, even though it's a national champion. But how can I make it more, and how can I create other opportunities at the end of this competition? So that I pretty well went straight into work on that, of like, what can I do to give back and to help that part of the industry grow. Like, there's not a lot for professional chefs in Australia to be able to test themselves. That's the premier cooking competition for professional chefs. So I have that much of a love for the industry still, that I really want to make it better, and I really want to leave a mark, but a meaningful mark, like the names and trophies and that kind of stuff is what it is, right? But if you can leave a positive mark where you're not doing things just for yourself, it's for the greater good, then that benefits generations to come.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared at the moment to make the sacrifices to run my own restaurant, or to go back in executive chef of a team, to push for the accolades needed to be able to make that mark to a handful of chefs.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can create something that can reach multiple chefs for generations to come, and inspire young people to go into the industry, then that is a very positive mark.
Yeah, almost changing the direction of the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. I think, Jude, like we said about many industries now, because of this lack of accountability, this lack of drive that people have got, the industries are getting manipulated, and they're going towards instant gratification. And there's something just beneath the surface. If you scratch that surface, and if you go from people who don't know to the people that know, there is something that I'm trying to promote it without directly telling people what it is, because there isn't a proper understanding of it. But it's fulfilling and eye-opening and inspiring for people once they can see it. Yeah. And this is what we're talking about. It's about, I'm trying to do it in the martial arts industry, where we're trying to change the direction it's headed, because they're not going to get out of it what they should if they're heading in that direction. And you can warn people, and you can wave the flag, and you can say, please don't go this way. We talked about it, Ovido, in the maze. When you've walked that path, you know the good points and you know the bad points, and you know the places people can turn wrong. So you warn them, but they want to go there because you've been there.
And they think that you're crazy too, right?
Yeah.
Going, well, don't do that.
Don't
and they
do
go,
that,
oh, who's this telling me what to do
Yeah.
and not to do? And
that's where the problem, because it's like, how do we get the people to understand the right from the wrong, that like the true from the untrue, the known to the not known? And it's kind of, we need to really take time to reflect and have conversations like this with people that have walked the paths and understand which direction it could have gone and which direction it has gone, and why they got out of it, what they got out of it. Because I've seen people do exactly the same paths and they haven't got out of it what you've got out of it. Like you said earlier, you don't want to become the grumpy old person that's got disconnection from their own kids because they spent too much time at work, because they've done these things. There's a few people I've noticed in the world that are doing it right. Yeah. And the reason they're doing it right is exactly what you just said, because you finished it and you wanted to give back. And I think that's why we're friends, really, because you're one of the people in the world that whatever somebody gives you, you want to give back double straight away. And it's weird, but when you get to that point in life, giving back double makes you happier. Yeah. Which is it's a very strange way to be. And there's not many people that I know that are like that, but there's a few of them that have been on this podcast already. So what can we expect from you next?
So I've got a pitch for a TV show, which is aimed for my goal of being able to give back, which I kind of want to keep a little bit under wraps on the thing, it's because I've written myself in as the host, and I'm like, I'm Rocky Balboa in that, myself to the top, but also giving the opportunities to everyone else, you know. So
sounds exciting.
Yeah, so it's that's the first one. Like I've done, stumbling my words there, but I've done the NIDA course of the presentation to camera. Been working a lot more on my presentations for speaking to camera and cooking to camera. So me and the family are keen to move out to the country, to the farm, and I'd be very interested in doing a TV show of moving to the country with the kids, kind of River Cottage, kind of Marcus Waring Tales from the Kitchen Garden, and getting to know the community and learning about living off the land and sharing that with the nation, as in addition to the other ideas. So that's the main things. Obviously, there's personal goals of training more, getting myself in that peak dad mode where I can emulate things that I had growing up with dad and mum, and being that person that I was raised to be, if that makes sense. So there is still holes and things that I'm still working to grow personally as well as professionally, you know.
It's exciting. Like, again, thanks for your time today, and we know you're coming back in January back to England, so that'd be great as well. But yeah, I can't express enough how impressive it has been to watch you develop over the last 20 years. And I'd like to say thanks for being on part of the show today as well. So nice one.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, man.
It's always a pleasure.
Nice. As always, I like to do a reflection of the conversation and the things that I've taken out of it, the points. There's always things I've missed, but I always get something to ponder upon when I have these conversations with the amazing people that I'm lucky enough to have as guests on this podcast. One thing that Tom said was, Tom had a mentor called Ken from Eastbourne College, and he said that Ken noticed the nuance about them, meaning the subtle differences or the shades of meaning within themselves and their character. And what it meant is that those people at the college that have gone above and beyond, they had a willingness to put in extra effort and time and attention. So they put in more effort, more time and more attention. And it was something to do with the character of those people that got them to where they've got to today. So I think that's a really important point to recognise that if we want to get where we're trying to get to, wherever that is, I know that sounds a little bit ambiguous, but wherever that may be, the people that finally make it are the ones that explored. They explored their own edges. They explored the territory. Like Borges said when we talk to Edo Portal, they explored the map. And eventually the map became as big as the territory because it had to be accurate enough to define the territory. So we need to be explorers. We need to be curious. We need to find our edges by pushing ourselves as much as possible to stay curious, which is really, really important. So it was the more time, the more attention, the more effort those people put in that got them there. This is the starting, the start point or the starting blocks of a very, very important journey. It's the only real journey that there actually is. And it's about reaching a critical mass. If you go far enough along that road, you're really going to find out who you are, what you're all about, how you react, how those reactions affect other people, how those reactions got there in the first place, where they came from, why we react this way. So I like to always think who, what, why, where, when, and how are the really important questions that kids like to ask all the time. So from that starting point, we've moved along. And then what Tomo said was that he got thrown in at the deep end. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the metaphor behind being thrown in at the deep end of a swimming pool? Because some people could drown and some people manage to pull it off. What is it that stops them drowning? And you could throw somebody in, but if their character is tall enough that their head stays above the water, then they're going to breathe. And then is that really fair to throw someone in at the deep end, or even to throw someone in at the shallow end when their character is not able to sustain them in the water? Because we all know you can drown in a very small amount of water. So we've got to look at our starting point in life and how we've developed from there. We might have travelled a mile but had a better starting point than another person. So it's not really fair to compare ourselves to others, but we do need to compare ourselves to our start point and how far we've moved along the journey, or we can't orientate ourselves. This one's really important as well. So we've talked about the depth of a human character. Have they got depth, or is it a very shallow character? And the reason it would be shallow is because they haven't had enough things to measure themselves against. They haven't had enough trials, enough tests, enough mistakes, enough interactions, enough circumstances to be in. So again, by putting ourselves out in these places, which Tomo says, he put the pressure on himself. He wanted the friction, basically. He wanted the friction to help him transform. And what it was he's peeling these broad beans whilst he's got his foot on a book to keep the pages open. And it's the knowledge in the book plus the knowledge of his mentors that he wanted to become. So he saw something in the knowledge and he knew that if he kept going at it, he would eventually become that thing. And he did. And it's been, like he said, it's been almost a 20-year process to be able to do that. So the thing he was trying to become came out of the practice, which is really, really important. So we then moved on and we sort of said that there is a turmoil between the perfectionism at work and then not getting any rest because he's working so hard and then missing out on the experiences that he had with his friends, which was us lot growing up and going out. So even thinking about this, I get a funny feeling in my voice because the amount of fun times where Tom wasn't there, and then he used to appear from nowhere when we'd been out for a little while having a party, and he'd join in, and it would be exactly like it was with this conversation. Very, very dear, close friends. So it talks about the connection that we have, a safe connection with people who are also on this journey of understanding themselves and finding themselves through the practice, which is really, really important. But we're talking about that turmoil. So if we strive for perfectionism and we don't rest, it's going to be very difficult. If we do rest, then we're missing out on certain things. So sometimes we burn the candle at both ends. When in actual fact, what's wrong with resting? Why do we need to have that party? Why don't we all go and do something relaxing and restful together, which is really, really important. Excuse me, I should have shut the door so that the cats didn't come out, but they're cool. So we then went on to talk about something which was really interesting, is a very favourite TV show of mine and Tom's, which was My Name is Earl. It's about a petty criminal who wins big money on the lottery, but then he loses the lottery ticket. And he thinks, why has this happened? And he comes up with the solution that it was his karma that caused him to lose his lottery ticket. So he goes through a process of searching through his past for all the people that he's wronged and correcting his karma, making it up to them by doing all sorts of different favors for different people. And he eventually finds something more important than the lottery ticket, which is the safe connection that some of us were lucky enough to have with certain people through our lives all the way along. And it's really sort of saddening to see that there's people out there nowadays that don't have the safe connection with not only their friends and people that they've become to call family, but they didn't even come from a place that was safe. And I can relate to that with my family. We're going to talk with my mum in a few episodes. So these kind of things are what I'm looking at, something to think about. I miss Tom dearly on a daily basis. I always think about him, especially when I'm trying to cook something that I burn, because I'm terrible at cooking. And I wish Tom well, and his family, the kids, Jess and everybody, absolutely amazing people. And I hope to see them again soon. And thanks, Tom, for giving us your time and your attention on this podcast.